Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Burning Road Podcast. I'm Jake Scarborough, joined by my co-host Matthew Stott, Sal Zavala, Fidel Fabian, and one of the newest members, Kyler Boggs. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, okay. I thought he was clapping. Okay.
All
Good
right.
call.
Well, nevertheless, we've got a lot to talk about. We haven't recorded in a while, as well, we're all aware because of conflicting schedules or whatnot, availability just in general. But this is probably the last episode of the year, so we probably won't be back until late January, whatever, taking the month of December off for the most part. So, with that being said, to get in a roll of things, we've wrapped up the NASCAR season. I think it's fair to start off with the truck series, if anything. Thoughts, what the season was about. Stotts, we'll roll off with you.
I'm not too sure. I watched the Chucks, but my memory is not too fond of what happened in the Chucks except for the last race. So, I don't know. I think the race or if, for the finale, it was good. I enjoyed the finale, but overall with the Truck series, it was, I guess okay. I don't look too much into the Chucks anymore like I used to, so I don't really keep up with what's happened and all that. But as for the finale, I thought it was a very interesting one. Really had a lot go on in that, so I thought the Chucks were good, at least for the finale.
Mhm.
I think season wise, you saw some drivers really break through. Carson, after he got the first win, Heim was absolute class of the field. I think he'll continue to do so next year as well. But a lot, especially after the finale at Phoenix, a lot of the stuff that kind of rose to the top was where's the respect level gone, at least for that series, because you get a bunch of these kids in, seeing that that's essentially what you need to do to win a race there. So I think next year it'll be interesting to see if we get at least some level of respect back there. Because I mean, it was ridiculous throughout the whole season, I think. Um, but hoping it all goes well. I mean, other than all the wrecking and people getting wrecked in the season finale, I think um, the format is doing what people wanted it to do in the trucks final couple races. So I think next season should be a lot more fun to watch, see these trucks go around those big tracks like that.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the last race, and it just seems like anytime we're near the end of the season, the respect's just out the window whenever it comes to racing for the championship. Because as we saw Corey Heim and Carson Hocevar get into it with each other near the end of the Phoenix race, which essentially costed Grant Enfinger pretty much the title, and that really changed things. And so I just feel like as far as when that stuff happens, stuff has to be more severe because Corey Haim got a penalty on Wednesday, and it was essentially nothing because all it was a 25-point penalty, which just dropped him to fourth, which didn't mean anything considering um, he wasn't competing for the title at the end of the race anyways because of that. And so I feel like NASCAR has to do something about that whenever it comes to stuff like that for next season, like a much harsher penalty, like a race suspension or something like that, because if that didn't happen, Grant Enfinger was going to win that championship.
Fabian?
Yeah, trucks overall was just not enjoyable. Not from a racing aspect, not from a respect aspect, not from a TV coverage aspect. Just it's just every single worst part of NASCAR jumbled into one series, and that's just trucks. When it comes to horrible racing, horrible officiating decisions, horrible everything. I just no words at all for the truck series.
Well, I feel like I've been kind of saying this all year long, um, even a little bit last year too. The truck series isn't what it used to be. At this point, it's just recognized for being the truck series because, oh yeah, they're running trucks, not the regular cars. When you could go back maybe 6 years and see this was a series where drivers went to develop. You had, former champions of the sport kind of go down there, run a lot of races just to kind of keep up and teach these young guys what they're doing. And it seems like the past couple of years it's swayed away from that. And this year was the big example of that. I mean, as it's been brought up, the championship race with Corey Heim, Carson Hocevar. I'm gonna be honest. I've dug into Carson Hocevar a few times this year on his actions and how he's driven. I did last year as well. I don't blame Corey Heim for what he did, but at the same time, it screwed a guy out of the championship unjustly. Grant Enfinger did nothing wrong and he lost the championship because, two kids in the sport don't know how to behave, which in most people's opinions and in mine too, it's just a joke, if anything. So yeah, I agree with Kyler on that. NASCAR kind of needs to take a little more action. I agree with Fidel that, you know, this is every bad thing you could say about the sport is basically what the truck series is. And it's sad to see that. But aside from that, I mean, we had the Xfinity series. Obviously, they had a lot of changes this year with drivers moving across series or just across teams. So that season, Matthew,
what was the question?
man,
on the
you
Xfinity
need to listen.
It
Xfinity
was
series
about
summary.
I thought it was really good. I actually thought the Xfinity Series was probably the most competitive in a long time. You had obviously John Hunter, Austin Hill, Sam Mayer showing up there late. Justin Allgaier. I thought the racing was really good throughout the year. Um, and then the finale was pretty good too. I forgot who won it, but I'm pretty sure it was good. Oh, it was Austin Hill, wasn't it? Yeah, it was that guy. But no, it was good. It was nice. It was a fun season for the Xfinity Series. I thought it was. They created a lot of excitement from the start to the very end. So I thought that was. I would put it over the Truck Series by far.
Yeah, I mean, I think time and time again, the Xfinity series showed this season that it's the best product NASCAR has put out. And I hope they change nothing in the off season. I know they made some changes to the cars for the super speedways, Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta. I really couldn't tell a difference. I mean, I still thought all those races were great to watch. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see the new faces there. Like Jesse Love, I think he's extremely talented, and I think he'll have a good season in that. But man, this is this is the car. These are the packages that they need to be running Sunday, because for your best product on the weekend being on Saturdays, there's no reason why it's not something like what you're racing on Sundays, which is what brings in all the money, all the TV deals, all the sponsor deals, everything like that.
Yeah, and I think personally, this was the most competitive series season we've probably seen in a very long time, since I want to say maybe 2016 or something, because the racing was very good. There were of course some races where things happened as they did in the truck series, but the competitiveness was on another level this year. And you had drivers in the playoffs that respected each other, and that really made it a lot better as far as how they race each other whenever it comes to the championship. And something that surprised me is Cole Custer coming back to the Xfinity series after being in the Cup series for a couple of years, and winning the championship. And not only that, his teammate Riley Herbst won his first career race at Vegas. And so it seemed like towards the late part of the season, Ford, not only in the Xfinity series but all three series, really stepped up their game in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Xfinity series is the complete opposite of the Truck series. It has all the best parts of NASCAR in that just one series. If you talk about short track racing, I think was it last year or 2 years ago we saw one of the best finishes at Bristol. If we're talking about the mile and a half racing, it's not as good as Cup, but it's serviceable to say the least. Plate racing is pretty good. Uh, this season, especially with the NBC coverage, it was a step up from last year. Love seeing Dale Jr. and Jeff Byrne being a bit goofy on the actual racetrack, walking by the cars, actually getting people hyped up just for a feeder series. And it actually develops the drivers a lot better than the truck series. So, all in all, it's a 8 out of 10 in my books.
Well, I'm gonna have to agree across the board. Everyone said it now. Xfinity Series was, yeah, the best season, and there's no doubting that. Or the best series across the three. And I feel like it's kind of been that way for the past couple of years. The past couple of years we've also had like its big three in a sense. This year it was mostly Jay Chin, Custer, and the third one was kind of a toss around between a couple guys. But at the end of the day, you look at it and you've seen their product throughout the year. You didn't see, people just intentionally wrecking each other. And so it's a huge step up from what the truck series is. And yeah, with what Sal said, your best products on Saturdays, which is the weird part. And now they've landed a full year TV deal, which we'll get into here in a bit. But it's just weird to think that that series can be the best one. And that's the hybrid series of all these young guys trying to get up to Cup still. And all these older guys that are like, hey, we weren't Cup material, but we're ready here and we're going to fight for the championship. You see that with guys like Allgaier and, predicted to be Allmendinger again, who's going to move back down. But, you've got stuff like that going on and you can get a good product. So it's nice to see the Xfinity series, had a good year. Cole Custer, yeah, making that move to come back down and win that championship. Somehow Ford came out of the gates when I think everyone was been trashing on Ford all year long, and they managed to sweep the weekend with the championship. So it's going to be interesting to see how that carries over to next year. But aside from that, we had the Cup Series season, which, the next gen car, second year of it, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So second year, people still had their doubts based on last year. Um, and well, your guys' thoughts on it?
Um, hmm, hmm. I guess it was cool. I really don't know. I don't remember much from it. My focus wasn't too much on Cup, which is probably sad. So I don't know. I get, I, it was okay. You know, uh, whoever Blaney won the championship, so it's nice. I like a Ford winning a championship, so a Ford driver, or I did, so that's nice. But I don't know. I don't have much to talk about on that because I can't unfortunately remember much. But oh well.
You need to study up next time.
Sorry, Mom. I'll do my homework.
I think we're far from the correct stuff that needs to be your on track product. But I think this year in a couple spots we took a step in the right direction. I don't like what I'm hearing Steve Phelps say, but hopefully there is a change of heart somewhere in there. um, yeah, I mean it was decent season overall. I mean you had interesting winners with McDowell and AJ finally being able to break through and win with colleague and Cup again full time though. But yeah, my main thing is they know they have a lot of work to do. I'm glad they know and have somewhat listened to fans that the product, especially on short treks, isn't there just yet. Um, but I think they did make minor steps in the right direction for at least being in season adjustments. I hope whatever they test out at Phoenix here in a couple weeks, it's able to be what we as fans want to see and what drivers want to see as well. But yeah, cool for Blaney to win the championship. I'm ready for next season.
Yeah. And something that I've noticed, ever since the next gen, is everyone's starting to become, closer in performance. There's not really like, a massive gap in, from the big teams to the small teams. Like for example, Hendrick versus, Front Row Motorsports. Because, even without McDowell's win at the Indy Road Course, he was still, in the chase, or in the playoffs rather, on points. So I think that just shows how much different the next gen is compared to the cars in the past. Because in previous years, Front Row Motorsports was nowhere, except only on the super speedways, such as Daytona and Talladega. But even then, just like what you mentioned, Sal, AJ's win at the Roval, that's another, small team. Colleague does have, success in the Xfinity series, but as far as Cup goes, they're not that big, and so it is nice to see that I would say the competition, I would say it is a little bit tighter, but at the same time, you know, you start to get the question of, okay, well, everything's starting to become, very similar within the teams of each other. And so, would that affect, engine and team partnerships, for example? I think, it was either this year or last year that Rick Ware went over to RFK instead of Stuart Haas for their alliance.
Yeah, I feel like the car overall has not really changed or mostly messing with the tire compounds. This year, intermediate racing was as good as last year. Both Kansas races were good. Las Vegas was a bit and I'm blanking on one race, but I feel like all the intermediate races were great. Short track and road course racing still needs some work. Plate track racing looks good, but I've heard that some drivers are just sitting there saving fuel and it looks like they're having good racing, but it's not really good racing for the drivers. Uh, they really need to bump up that horsepower because this car needs horsepower. It's not the number one solution and all fix all, but it'll at least be a step in the right direction. But they're just taking every single route that doesn't involve increasing the horsepower. I feel like there was a step in the right direction with the tire compounds because apparently Steve O'Donnell, they tried to go with a softer tire compound, but it somehow made the race even worse. So now they went with a harder tire compound. And now, even though they're not wearing as much tire wear, Martinsville and Phoenix, they showed some improvement with the racing, especially with the three-way battle between Chastain, Blaney, and Truex in the season finale. That it showed a bit of improvement because that was probably one of the best racing we've seen at Phoenix with this new car. But overall, like maybe a 7.5 out of 10 with a new car, second year in.
Personally, I was very judgmental of the car last year for not only its quality, but obviously everyone had their concerns about the safety of the car last year, and it was questionable this year. And we saw, for example, with the Ryan Preece crash, the safety was improved. But the Cup Series as a whole, I would say it was honestly on the mark. It was better than what it was last year. And I'd agree with Kyler. Yeah, the next gen car has brought more of an equal playing field for all these guys, but it was nowhere near as equal as last year. And I feel like a huge reason was that, this is our second year. Teams have figured it out, stuff like that. What last year we had 18 different winners, and this year we had how many? Like 13.
13, 14, something like that.
Yeah. So we didn't have the same amount of different winners as we did last year. That's also because these guys have finally figured out how to run it, teams, drivers, all that. Um, before we get into the whole Steve Phelps and what he was kind of saying about the horsepower, I'm going to bite my tongue on that. But, we've seen improvement with the short track package slowly. We've seen improvements with the tire issues. It's just a matter of getting that sweet spot. And still, you've got a lot of fans and drivers unhappy. So, in my personal opinion, I enjoyed the Cup Series season. I didn't think it was that bad, but they still have got a long way to go before, they can top their Saturday product. But obviously moving forward after mentioning the Steve Phelps comments, there's two comments of his that I'd like to go over. Since we were just talking about, how the seasons went, season finales were mentioned. The Thursday before the championship weekend, they said that the playoffs weren't gimmicky. Sure as shit. The Truck Series championship kind of wasn't the most ideal way for a championship to be crowned. You look at the Xfinity Series season where Cole Custer was like sixth in points. If it were Winston format, he wins the title. And then Ryan Blaney was like seventh in points if it was Winston points, and he won the title and had like nowhere near the stats of like the top three drivers in points. So lots of people pissed off about that. I want your guys' thoughts. What's the whole idea with the playoff format, and did this weekend kind of prove fans' points against NASCAR that they are in fact, an issue?
Man, I don't look too much into that, mainly because I don't know too much about it. So I really don't. I don't know. There's always these theories people be throwing around. I'm not one of them. I don't know. I mean, shit. Like, I mean, I don't know what to fucking say. Like, I mean, what am I supposed to say? Oh, they're trying to do it to put on a show, or I don't know, bro. I don't know. I mean, the system's been pretty garbage for as long as we've been around. So it's just a system issue, and rather it gets through their deadbeat brain or not, we won't know. So it's always going to spark some problems though when it comes out of this. Whether no matter what series, it's always going to be a problem. It's always going to spark the conversation. So I think it's just the same old thing where it's just a lot of talking. So no, not really.
No, I think they want to make sure I word this right.
Speak your mind, homie.
I think I get why they did it. It's to create the Game 7 moment that you get in baseball, basketball, Super Bowl moment, football. I'm okay with it. If we continue with this playoff format, I'm okay with it. And I hate whenever people try to discredit, in this case, we'll say Ryan Blaney. Well, in the old format, Ryan Blaney finishes seventh. Well, guess what? We haven't used that format in a little over 20, almost 20 years. Last time was what, 03?
Yeah.
I may not agree with, like, if I could change the way the playoffs work out, I would probably be against the one race season finale. You have all these other rounds, 3 rounds, and then you're just going all hell break loose last round, last race. I'd like to see maybe 2 or 3 races, I'm sorry, in the last round, see how that would play out. But yeah, I don't think, I think we're past the point. If this was like, let's say 2014, I could see it. It was the first year of it. 15, 16, probably, if people were to make that argument, I could see where they were coming from. But it's been 20 years since we used full season points. It's been coming up on 10 years now since we've introduced this format. This format is not going away. Personally, with like my family, my friends that don't watch NASCAR, this is like my pitch to them to like get them to watch a race or so. Apart from like Daytona or anything, like, oh yeah, like today's the season finale for NASCAR. Like these four drivers have a shot to race, but they have to race against each other, plus another 30, 32 cars out on track. So you don't know who's gonna win. And I've had people like tune in, text me questions and all that. So I think it's doing its job. I think there are things you could change to it to make it maybe better for both new coming fans and your old school fans. But I personally don't have a problem and would like to see them stay, not forever, but for a little longer.
I mean, I'm personally not a fan of it, mainly because you know, in the first couple of years, it has caused the drivers to you know, really to not drive with respect with each other, you know, as we saw in the truck series. But you know, 2014 it was Brad Keselowski versus everyone, and then 2015 you had Logano and Kenseth. 2017, um, um, I think it was either 2017 or 2018 with Logano and Truex again. You know, there's at least been one thing that's happened because of that format, because you know, whenever drivers are, you know, below that elimination, they do things that they wouldn't normally do in order to, you know, advance. And we saw it in 2020 with Kevin Harvick. He was 1 point out of the, you know, final four, and we all saw it. I mean, it was clear as day that he tried to take out Kyle Busch to advance. And, you know, this system creates a driving standard for everyone that, you know, the only way you're gonna, you know, pretty much advance or move on if you're in a certain situation is if you wreck someone. When, you know, in reality, you know, the different chase formats, you know, back in 2013 and stuff like that, that wasn't really an issue because there was no risk of, you know, hey, you're being eliminated from the championship, this is the last race to try and do anything. And so, you know, that's just something I've noticed with, you know, the driving standards, not only in the Cup Series but, you know, all three series. You know, it was really bad in the Truck Series, um, and so I just don't think, you know, it's the best for NASCAR. However, just like Sal said, it's never going to go away because, you know, it's been here for almost 10 years, and, you know, that's not going to change. But um, I just don't agree with it because, you know, because of those incidents happening, you know, NASCAR is going to use that as, you know, advertising for the races next year and try and create, you know, a newer audience for fans, and, you know, say and show them, hey, this is what happens during the playoffs, and you know, try and, you know, broaden this you know, spectrum across the US and stuff like that. And another reason why I don't like it is because I do think it's gimmicky, because in 2019 in the Truck Series, Matt Crafton won the title without winning a single race, and he had the worst stats of, you know, anyone in the chase the entire season. And, you know, it's I would say this system is don't hate the player, hate the game type of thing, because you know, obviously the drivers and teams know, you know, what's at risk, what's at stake, and you know, it's just about, you know, how NASCAR perceives it. And um they use this as, in my opinion, the perfect way for, you know, entertainment values with, you know, chaos, rivalries, and stuff like that. And so, I mean, there have been interesting moments in the chase, don't get me wrong, but I feel like the bigger picture is about, you know, the driving standards and how the championship is actually determined.
Yeah, not a huge fan of the playoff system. Almost 10 years ago, Ryan Newman almost proved that the playoff system is not for this sport. It quite literally illegitimizes every single championship. I'm trying to put the words out, but my brain's not working today. Kyle Busch back in 2015, he was a prime example of why these playoffs are not good. 2016, Johnson went nearly winless the entire year, except for his. I don't remember what race he won before he went on like a entire 4 month winless streak, but it took him nearly until the Charlotte to win another race, then Martinsville, and then the Carl Edwards catastrophe, then went on to win the championship. 2018, we had the big three: Harvick, Truex, Kyle Busch, dominating the entire sport, and then Logano out of nowhere moves Truex out the way at Martinsville, and then wins the championship, and just felt underwhelming to say the least. 2020, it was Harvick's year, 9 wins and completely dominant. Kansas, he was screwed over by the 550 package. Texas, NASCAR didn't throw out the caution for the rain, and then he went into the wall. And then Martinsville, as Kyler went over, he had to wreck Kyle Busch to get into the next round, but failed miserably. And then 2022, 2023. 2022 was more of a experimental year with next gen car, but then with 2023, we saw Byron have a breakout year, and with the playoffs being the playoffs, obviously the championship went to a different person that barely got a top 15 in like the last 8 races. I think I'm right about that. But yeah, I kind of feel bad if I'm a new fan watching these last couple of years and trying to figure out if these championships are legitimate or not. But yeah, it's not good. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna have to agree with you and Kyler on this. I've made my voice pretty vocal about, I'm not a fan of the playoffs, but I have to agree with Sal, they're not going anywhere. Um, we're kind of at that crossroad where we as fans just kind of have to sit there and accept that this is what NASCAR is going to do. And, we can't do anything about it because apparently the sport we follow doesn't like listening to its fans. Um, let alone the drivers, but we'll get into that in a minute. But it's bad when your first 3 years of this format in the Cup Series were all bad. 2014 with Ryan Newman almost winning it with what was he winless? Yeah, he was winless. 2015, Kyle Busch was like 26th in points, but ended up winning the title. And then 2016, Jimmy Johnson somehow sneaking way through. We've seen, Matt Crafton winning the championship without a win. We saw Daniel Hemrick win his championship where he only won the season finale. So you add all those little things together and you kind of sit there and question, like, is this legitimate? And as Kyler said, I feel like that was the best way to summarize it. It's the whole, don't hate the player, hate the game type of scenario. Because you see these fans try to discredit the champions that have won, like Ryan Blaney, for example. People are trying to discredit Blaney's championship, but at the same time, you can't because he did everything right. He did what the format requires you to do. People try to discredit Daniel Hemrick, people try to discredit Kyle Busch. You can sit there and argue that, but they did everything they needed to do on their end to win the title with the way the format works. So, if I could change the format, yeah, I'd say add on those 2 more races for the final 4, make it 3 races because I do find it shitty, We used to go from a format with the chase. That was the one I liked, where you had 26 races to get your shit together, be top 12 in points, and then you had 10 races to put on the best performance of your life. But now, you could have one bad race and be screwed. And we saw that with Martin Truex this year. Sure, that team dropped the ball in the playoffs, but you don't go from being top 2 all year to having one bad race each round and missing out on the final 4 because of it. I just find that dumb that, he went from regular season champion, great throughout the first 26 races, and then he was only skating through the rounds based off playoff points. And then he didn't even make the final 4 in the long haul because of an issue at Homestead. So, yeah, we're going to have to accept that the playoffs are still here to stay for a while, but, it sucks that we have to. I don't like it, but, it's for the entertainment. As Kyler mentioned, as Sal kind of mentioned, you get those guys making moves that you wouldn't normally see. Harvick on Bush, Ross with the Hell Melon, Hemrick with his finish against Cindric. You get all those little things. Ryan Newman putting Larson in the wall in 2014 at Phoenix. You get all those little things that add the excitement. You get the little drama of the fights. We saw that with Corey Heim and Hocevar this year in the Final Four. You get those drama, you get those little bits, and you still get that with the chase. We saw it with Gordon and Boyer in 2012, but apparently, that's not good enough. So I don't know. But the other comments from Steve Phelps that are being, well, tossed around by fans and people are not happy. He's saying that we don't need to add more horsepower, when that's something drivers and fans have both been saying we need more horsepower. And he's saying that's not the case. So, what's your guys' thoughts on that?
Maybe a little bit. Give us some.
Give us a little bit of sprinkles.
I think I think he's just talking out of his ass right now. I couldn't think of a nice way to say it. I'm not sure what exactly they're going to test at Phoenix. I hope that is some of it. Not asking you to give us 2,000, but I think some will help. I mean, at the end of the day, I think they'll make the right decisions. People will still find a reason to complain. But I don't know. I just really I want to dig in deep, see what they're testing at Phoenix. I know most of it is mainly that short track package, which we need it because that's more or less what a lot of the fan base likes to see. You had tracks like North Wilkesboro come back, and Larson just kicked everyone's ass. So I think he's going to go back on this statement, and I think it's going to be something that was like a freezing cold take now, but we'll definitely get something in. I hope that he's not being for real right now.
Honestly, I mean, I don't think it's a smart comment, especially when all the teams and drivers, who work on the cars and drive them are saying that, hey, we need more horsepower to provide better racing. Because I remember, I don't know if it was him or someone else, but it was back in 2019 where we obviously had that really bad package with the giant spoiler, which created a lot of dirty air. It was the quote. It goes along the lines of something like, we like what we're seeing because it's close racing, but sure, it's close or whatever, but it doesn't make it good, because I think it was the All-Star race in 2018 or 2019 where it was a pack race, and we don't need every race to be a pack race. And that's what I don't like of what they did with Atlanta, is because there's been so many other good races at Atlanta in the past, and then they changed it to a super speedway race. And I don't agree with that, because there was no need for that. The repave obviously had to happen, yeah, at some point, but the reconfiguration I don't agree with, because you know, I'm just not a fan of, the idea of close racing, is good racing, whenever it's a question to, how everything will be handled in the future. I think the perfect scenario would be decrease the downforce and have the horsepower at least 750 to 800, to be honest, because back in 2014 it was, I believe, 950 or 900 horsepower and very little downforce or extra downforce, I think. I'm not sure. But and that provided some of the best racing of the year. Chicagoland comes to mind, Auto Club. Um, but as the years go on, I just feel like with the next gen, the low horsepower, um, it's sort of becoming like a spec series in a way of how, like, for example, Formula 2 does their things with the spec chassis and equal equipment whenever it comes to performance. And I don't really like how it seems like that's how NASCAR is heading as far as the next few years go on for its future. So, you know, as a race fan, it's just difficult to try and enjoy watching these races, knowing that there can be better stuff, rather than what we have now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve Phelps is a very interesting guy. I know during the status point, him saying the playoffs are legitimate. I don't think any president of anything will go up there and just say, "Yeah, our stuff kind of sucks." It would be a bad look for any kind of company or any
Yeah.
kind of organization. But the horsepower thing is a different story because now you're just blatantly not listening to the drivers and teams who are saying this would help the car. This will do a lot of things to help the racing. And he says money, it's going to be a bit expensive to increase the horsepower. But I feel like it was expensive to put a racetrack in a football stadium out in California. I thought it was pretty expensive to not redesign, but to rebirth a track that was dead for nearly 30 years. I thought it was pretty expensive to put 2 tons of dirt on Bristol and race there for 3 years. It's pretty expensive to do all of that. Why is it now expensive to bump up the horsepower just by maybe 50 or 70? But um, I don't work for NASCAR HQ. I don't know what happens behind the scenes. Maybe Steve Phelps is smart and we're all just the dumb ones in this conversation. But um, from our perspective and from the drivers with teams, this just looks very stupid.
I'm gonna be one of those that's gonna say, yeah, give us a little more horsepower. It there's a fine line when it's the fans saying, oh yeah, we need more horsepower, and everyone else within the sport is like, no, we don't. That's not what we need. But when you literally have teams and drivers saying, yes, we need more horsepower, we need more horsepower, and you're saying, oh no, we don't. No, that's not what you guys need at all. You're not the one out there driving the car, Steve. So, kind of, why do you get a little bit of input? If you've got drivers saying that's what you need to put on a good product, then that's what you need to do. And, it's stuff like that on why IndyCar had a split years ago. When you're making decisions that weren't for the better of the sport in the driver's eyes. And when you get stuff like that, that's not good for business. And when you're on the business side of things, you want to listen to everyone you can. So, it's all those little things combining, and that's not a good look for the sport at all. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Maybe he'll listen to teams and drivers and fans and all that. Maybe he just kind of goes his own little way and tries putting on his little own product that he thinks is going to be the best thing in the world. That, I mean, only time can tell. But nevertheless, moving forward, big thing announced today were all the TV deals that will go into effect for 2025. if I'm looking at this right. It was that Xfinity is going to be on the CW full year, right? All right. And then
Yes.
Trucks is on Fox still, with the Cup Series being first 14 races on Fox, 5 races on TNT, 5 races on Amazon Prime, and then the remainder of the season being on NBC. Lots of topics going on throughout the fan base, mostly about the Amazon Prime part because I haven't really seen anyone complain about TNT. So, I mean, I'm going to let you guys decipher on that one.
Um, I I really like the Amazon Prime one just because the way they cover Thursday night football, you can do a couple different um streams of it. There's one where you get just normal game, normal commentary, and then they obviously throw in there like the next gen stats and stuff like that. Then there's actually one that is like just kind of like a stat stream of the game, like in actual time. Obviously, it's harder to do this with 40 race cars than it is with one football, but um, I think the anal with like the way they could do the like stats and stuff like that. Like I wouldn't be surprised if you. I know a very common thing we've seen lately is like heart rate monitors and all that while in the race car. I think they can bring a good like technology portion to the racetrack and like test some things out. I think I also heard that they're going to be covering some of the practice and qualifyings for the Fox races, aren't they?
Something along those lines.
Yeah, I haven't read too much into it yet, but I'm pretty sure I had seen that. But I mean, I think it's cool that people may not want to hear it, but streaming is more than likely in about like 10 to 15 years where we will be as like a the whole world or not whole world, whole United States probably. We'll start looking into that. Like personally, I don't have cable anymore. I use YouTube TV and amazing things by the way.
I
But
legally stream everything.
but I think it'll definitely be interesting how that comes up. And I'm really excited to see what kind of commentators they bring in for both Prime and TNT. So yeah, that'll be fun. I have no complaints for it. I'm all for it. You should give them more races.
Yeah, I think it's good for NASCAR as far as, like a marketing aspect because, obviously, that's been a question for years because, obviously in the 2000s we saw, literally NASCAR and literally everything, cereal boxes, commercials, we as far as that goes, we barely see that anymore. We only get maybe like one or two like actual NASCAR commercials that aren't race advertisements a year maybe. And so going to these different channels and TV companies, I think that's really important. And um not only that, but one thing that I didn't really like is that Fox Sports has the truck series for the full season, and it just seems to me as like personally, the Fox broadcast hasn't been the greatest in the years. It's been steadily declining, as far as the truck series goes, because they gotten rid of a lot of stuff. You know, I feel like it would really help if every race was on FS1. I know there are some that are on Fox, in general, but it's maybe like 2 races, and so I think what would help would be, you know, maybe NASCAR and NBC covering some of those truck races. And, because the NBC broadcasts have been great for the past few years. And, the Fox broadcast for not only, it just seems Fox with everything has been declining over the years. I know, obviously the Hollywood Hotel, that's not around anymore. that hasn't been around for a while. And so it just seems like over the years, there's, slowly getting rid of more and more things. And so I feel like after, this TV deal for them expires, I think that'll be the end of it because um, I think by then, Mike Joy probably won't be around anymore. Um, Jeff Gordon went back to Hendrick to be, a higher role in that team. Um, Clint Boyer, I don't know if he's going to continue doing commentating or not, but I don't really see Fox being around for, that long, even with Kevin Harvick, going to the commentary booth next year for Fox. Um, you know, I think he would go back to maybe being you know, a, like a team advisor role or some sort of maybe even a co-owner with Stewart Haas Racing or something like that. And so I don't see Fox lasting past this TV deal.
Yeah, I think this TV deal is a bit interesting. Well, for us older NASCAR fans, it's a bit nostalgic seeing TNT back on the schedule. But if I'm a new fan, I'm gonna be a bit confused seeing where are the races after a certain point because it goes Fox, TNT, Amazon, NBC, but not all the races will be on Fox. Some of them will be on FS1. All the races are going to be on NBC. Some of them are going to be on USA Network. So if I'm a new fan, I'm going to be a bit disoriented seeing the race go from Fox, FS1, then to TNT, then to Amazon, then to NBC, then USA. And then want to try and watch Xfinity Series, I go to the CW, and then it's a whole mess. Because I see NASCAR is trying to still garner the casual fan base, and I feel like every time they do, they go one step forward, two steps back. And I feel like the Chicago street race was that one step forward, but I feel like with this TV deal is a step and a half back. I can see NASCAR at least trying to evolve, going with streaming services, since now that is the future of watching sports and cables losing millions per year. Uh, I feel like they could have just gone with what F1's doing. They go on ESPN slash ABC throughout ESPN, ABC, and Sky throughout the entire year. And then they have their own streaming service at the same time. So you don't have to switch back and forth throughout the entire year. Something consistent, something with a bit more of a foundation. So a bit of a half and half of going from cable to streaming and then back to cable. But that's just my point.
I mean, I'm not gonna hate on the new TV deal. I'm all for it. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Fox. I'm gonna have to agree with Kyler. I don't see them lasting that long. Um, I'm currently fingers crossed that somehow, some way down the road, because I know Fabian's heard me say it plenty of times. The best form of motorsports broadcasting was when we had ESPN on ABC. That broadcasting team was by far my favorite, with just how they advertised everything, how they put the product out, and the commentary teams. Everything was perfect about it. And I'm just hoping maybe they'll kick their foot in the door if Fox steps out. But I'm not going to hate on the move with the CW. Trucks is on Fox again. Nothing's changing over there. But looking at the Cup Series, yeah, flipping across four different broadcast teams, that's going to be a little confusing for fans. And, sure, you're going to be able to get the more kept in touch with NASCAR fans, especially your older audience. But I feel like that's where they're going to kind of mess things up, is by going to Prime. Because, yeah, that's their way of trying to attract a new audience. But I feel like that may mess some things up with their older audience who probably doesn't even know what the hell Prime is, let alone has a smart TV. So you never know. I mean, I know plenty of people like that. So it's going to be weird to see how NASCAR kind of gets around that and keeps their loyal audience that has been there for years while also still trying to attract a new audience just from simply a TV deal. But, I'm interested to see, how that broadcast team works out for Prime and what they put together for TNT coming back. So it's a big ball of what ifs. Maybe we'll hear more throughout next year because this doesn't kick in until 2025. But I don't know. I think it's a good move by NASCAR for the long haul. Just those 4 races on Prime are going to be questionable, in my opinion. I'm trying to look at notes. The other thing we have here is Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, RFK Racing, making that announcement that David Reagan's coming back to run the Daytona 500 and the 60. So I don't know. Is there really any thoughts on that? Because it seems like this has kind of been the norm for the past couple of years.
Not really, because I mean, like you said, it's David Reagan, and he somehow always finds a way to run the 500 every year. Um, I do think it's kind of cool though that now, because what are they calling it, like stage 60 or something like that?
Something like that.
I think it's pretty cool that all 3 manufacturers now have their like
Program car.
program car. Chevy has Trackhouse and Project 91. Toyota has the 2311 67 car. They need to come up with a cool name for that because that's just boring. And then now you have stage 60. I'm interested to see where they go with this, if it's just like a throw in a guy who seems to run every other year. We can get like some pretty big names from other forms of motorsports into racing. And I mean, Ford has a lot of drivers down that pipeline. You look at Penske with their IndyCar program. And I don't know, I think there's a lot of potential to get some big name people in there.
For sure. And I honestly believe that David Reagan's not going to fully retire until he wins the Daytona 500 because obviously, he nearly won it in 2011, but was black flagged for that one move on the restart, which costed him. So I just think that he's just going to do the 500 every year until he can at least win it because he's been up at the front almost every time that he's done it, and so I think it's pretty interesting. He's back at Roush, the team that he started out with in his career, and so it's sort of like a reunion type of thing in my opinion. But like you said with the other program cars, I think what would be nice to see would be the international drivers like how Trackhouse did. Um, maybe have drivers like Jensen Button because he did last year with Stuart Haas, um, which is another Ford team, obviously. You know, and then Penske and IndyCar and stuff like that. Someone I would like to see would be Scott McLaughlin in the 60 car at either Chicago Street Course or the Indy Road Course, and then um, you know um, maybe even Daniel Ricciardo at some point because his future in Formula One's sort of uncertain, because he pretty much came in at the last second to take over Nick DeVries' spot, and you know of course the second Red Bull is up in question with Perez, so who knows how that's going to all unfold. But it should be interesting, to be honest, to see what they plan on doing. I know that whenever they tweeted from the Xfinity account from when they last ran the 60 in the Xfinity series. I do believe that maybe obviously not this year, but in another year or two, RFK will bring back the Xfinity series team because I think the only Ford team is Ryan Sieg Racing and Stuart Haas. So there's and then AM Racing as well. So there's barely any Ford cars in the field in the Xfinity series compared to the Chevys and Toyotas. And talking about that as well, I would like to see Penske back in the Xfinity Series because it just doesn't sit right with me not seeing the 22 in the Xfinity Series. Same with the 12. And, I just feel like if Ford can get on the right path, for next year, I think, other teams will start to look at maybe, coming back to the Xfinity Series, like, Penske and, RFK, for example. But the Stage 60 program, I think, will definitely be an eye opener for sure. Not only just for, Cup Series drivers, but also just, motorsports in general, because, this is the first time that I think in a very long time that, teams have, done these types of seats with, certain drivers across all motorsports.
Yeah, like what Sal said, it's nice to see that now all three manufacturers have their own program or smaller program for the next gen car, utilizing its one strength where now that the car is basically an equalizer for all the teams. Now any professional driver from a different sport can come in and test things out. As you saw at Chicago with SVG, came in won his first race in his first start, and we've had other surprise entries like Kimi Räikkönen at Watkins Glen last year, and I think it was Coda this year. And I think it's nice that we have other drivers from different motorsports interested in racing in NASCAR. But other than that, I feel like the announcement of David Reagan in the car was a bit of a wet fart, kind of just high in my expectations. But overall, I think it's good for Ford.
So before I get into this, I gotta ask Sal, what are you eating?
Apple pie.
I just see you like panning away from the camera a little bit. Oh
Had my
boy.
Thanksgiving dinner today. Sam wasn't home, so she got home today and made me some stuff.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. All right. Well, to the stage 60 thing, I do think this is going to be a big move for David Reagan. This is probably the biggest chance he's had at a Daytona 500 in years. Probably since the last time he was at Roush. Aside from that though, with this program, I feel like we're probably going to see Jenson Button come back, run a couple races with them. I wouldn't be surprised to see Scott McLaughlin. I would love to see him come in and run a couple races. But it's going to be different to see, you've got these international guys. If Ford tries going that route, you've got Toyota and Chevy trying to appeal to these guys. I feel like it's going to be easier for Toyota to reach out to more international drivers than it is Chevy and Ford. So we may just kind of see them stick to, hey, let's get some guys from IndyCar over here. But I mean, we're not going to know. I can only see it being, Jensen, maybe Scott, we're getting David Reagan for this one race. I wouldn't be surprised to see them kind of toss in a couple truck or Xfinity guys for some one-offs. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see Cole Custer, Riley Herbst get some cup starts with them. Maybe even Brett Moffitt if he does stay at AM Racing. Deegan maybe if they try giving her a one-off. Maybe Ben Rhodes, who knows? I feel like they're going to try to use that as a development seat more than Chevy and Toyota have used theirs as a development seat. But, we've got a whole year to find out, and they're starting off with the veteran to help build that program. So it's going to be cool to see, especially with how well RFK's been at the plate tracks. We saw Chris Buescher win at Daytona with Brad Keselowski just up his rear, and then them quick and speed weeks. So, I mean, I think David Reagan's got a huge shot at the 500 this year, and this may be the last time we see him if Kyler's prediction about that's right. But nevertheless, I'm not sure. Oh yeah, we all right. So here's our send off. Here's our send off for topics for F1 season predictions for 2024, and then we'll get into NASCAR and IndyCar.
Max Verstappen wins every race. Oh man, I don't even know what to predict. I think a couple of the teams might be like Mercedes, McLaren. I think they might be a tad bit closer because I mean they're towards the end of the season. I feel like it was more. I feel like Max actually had to work for um the wins there at the end. Uh, hoping Checo turns it around because this season was not fun. And yeah, that's it on my end.
All right.
I mean, I think Max for now is going to be in a league of his own, like how, Vettel was at Red Bull, Lewis at Mercedes. We've seen, certain drivers over the past, like every, 4 or 5 years, just be in a league of their own. Schumacher from like the 2000 to 2004, and then it was a bit of a mixed match between '05 and '09, with four different drivers winning titles, and then you got the Vettel dominance, and then not only that, Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, and now Max Verstappen at Red Bull. And so I believe it was back in, I think, late August or September that Red Bull stopped developing their car for this year. So that just shows how much of a rude awakening that it's going to put on other teams for next season. But a prediction that I think, as far as our early prediction, I think McLaren is going to be on a back foot again because it seems like every year since 2019, they start the season out slow, they work through a couple of things, and then they become fast towards the end of the season. And I think Aston Martin is still going to be the best of the rest. I would say, maybe the fourth best team, per se, but I can definitely see Ferrari stepping up their game. You had Fred Vasseur at Ferrari take a lot of initiative and realize what's going on and stuff, and they may have not been there this season as far as where they wanted to be, obviously, but I think with nearly getting P2 from Mercedes, I think it was by 4 points or something that Mercedes got them in the constructors title by. Obviously still miles behind Red Bull, but um, I think for not only Mercedes but also Alfa Romeo, those teams were in a bit of a rebuild mode, to set for next year, and not only that, prepare for also 2026, because as we know, Alfa Romeo is now officially called Sauber at the start of 2024 until 2026 when Audi comes in. And so everything's going to change when those 2026 regulations take place, because no one's going to know how any of that is going to affect the cars, the tire temperatures and stuff like that whenever it comes to Pirelli. And I think it's going to be for the first year, like in 2026, I think it's going to be a bit of a mix between Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren, and even Mercedes. And if Aston Martin still stays, I know there's rumors of Lawrence Stroll selling the stake of the team. Another manufacturer might come in. It was the Porsche rumor was is no longer a thing, because they wanted 50% of Red Bull, and Red Bull was not wanting to do that. And so that backed out. So Porsche might try and approach another team with an offer. Lamborghini, maybe. I know Stefano De Montecali was the former CEO of Lamborghini. So, we might see talks about more manufacturers joining. Cadillac has stepped up their sports car performances in IMSA and WC. So it's really a toss up of what's going to happen in 2026 with a lot of things changing. But as far as next year goes, I can see McLaren. When maybe a few races, obviously Piastri had a very good rookie season. But I think Norris and Piastri will win at least one race each from each other. Maybe Piastri with two sprint race wins. He almost got the one in Belgium, I believe, and then Qatar he won the sprint race. And I think the future for McLaren is going to be very bright as far as that goes. I think Aston Martin still has things to clean up with, Lance Stroll and stuff like that. Sauber has some things to clean up because I know they're in a bit of a rebuild mode right now because, obviously after last year, Andreas Seidel left McLaren to go over to Alfa Romeo to be their CEO to of operations, I believe. And it's going to be a bit of a mix up in the midfield. I know that Haas are not going to be as strong as they would hope. AlphaTauri, as we know, it's going to be called Racing Bulls next year. And so the midfield is going to be pretty crazy. I think Alpine is going to be the best of the rest again, like how they were in 2020 and 2018, I believe, as well. So yeah.
My big prediction for next year is either Red Bull takes a step back or Aston Martin takes a huge step forward. I feel they're gonna be at each other's necks throughout the entire season. I don't think we'll get like a Hamilton versus Verstappen situation. I thought it'll probably be like 2022 of Leclerc against Verstappen, where I feel like they could win a few races, but then going to the second half of the season, they just drop like a rock, like this year. But that's my only prediction.
All right. Well, oh, I think Red Bull's going to be at the top of their game still. Obviously, they stopped production on the car pretty early. I feel like Ferrari, like Kyler said, they're going to be kind of with or more towards Red Bull than they were this year. Obviously, they started picking up the game towards the end of the year. Aston Martin will probably still be pretty competitive. As for the other teams, I feel like Mercedes is honestly going to take the biggest step back you'd expect. I feel like that team has done everything possible to get the speed Red Bull has, that they're trying to more so copy them rather than try to think of something outside the box that will work. So I feel like they're going to end up showing up how Racing Point did a couple of years ago when they showed up with just the old Mercedes. I feel like they're going to just show up with the old Red Bull from this year, and it's not going to work out for them in the long haul. McLaren, I'm going to have to say the opposite on Kyler on that one. I feel like with the two drivers they've got, Lando's been around for a minute. He knows what he's doing. Oscar's obviously figured it out quickly. And I feel like those two are going to be probably one of the better duos in the field. I feel like if McLaren gets out of the gates quick, they could honestly give Red Bull a run for their money when it comes to constructors. And that's only if Red Bull doesn't figure out the second driver scenario. Because I want Perez back, but I'm still leaning towards the fact that Red Bull's going to go a different way with Perez. Sure, he's locked down with a contract, but Red Bull can always say, you know what? We don't want you anymore. So it's tough to say. There's a lot of questions floating around. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to be surprised if we go into Abu Dhabi next year and see the same result as this year. But to move forward to IndyCar, obviously this year was just destroyed by Alex Palou, but still an entertaining year nonetheless. He locked up the championship a race early. But next year, there's a lot of what ifs, Andretti downsizing, stuff like that. Some new drivers entering the field. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't watch much IndyCar. Pato's gonna do great. What's the situation with Pillow and the whole? Because wasn't he supposed to be going to McLaren next year?
So
He signed a contract with them, I believe, back in 2022, but that was for the F1 seat that he was going to be wanting to go to because obviously, after Ricardo was announced that he wouldn't come back to McLaren after 2022, I think the plan was Palou was going to go there initially to take over his seat, but then Piastri got signed, and so Palou, even though he signed the contract, he was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's when the legal battles came in between Ganassi and McLaren, and even though it's still going on, I believe, because this has been going on for the past 2 years. It was initially announced back after 2021 that Pilot was not going to be at Ganassi, but then for the past 2 years, it's really been legal battles between McLaren and Ganassi about the contract between Pilot.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I want to see how that goes because if he stays at Ganassi, I think he's definitely gonna be one of the biggest contenders for the season. But I'm really curious as to that because I listen here and there. But I didn't know what the current status of that whole situation was.
Yeah, and going back on that, I think it's just going to be, Ganassi is going to just end up paying McLaren a lot of money for that because of the contract breach that of Pilot. Either Ganassi or Pilot is going to pay McLaren however much because I think now that Pilot doesn't see the future at McLaren in Formula One, now that Piastri and Norris are there for however many years they may be, Pilot wants to stay at Ganassi and continue the IndyCar series, and he knows that because he's won the championship in 2021 and this year, and so I still think he's going to be a top threat because the Ganassi drivers are always a threat. Scott Dixon, he's very good still. Um, he always blooms late in the season. It seems like Plo is going to be on top of his game, but one driver that I'm interested to see how he's going to do is Linus Lundqvist, and who came from Indy Lights. Um, you know, and he's going to be in the 8 car who, Marcus Ericsson ran this year, who is going to Andretti. So it'll be interesting to see how Linus, steps up, and, fills that full-time seat in the number 8 car. And, the 8 really, I mean, that's been the revolving door around Ganassi, it seems like, with that car. Um, I know that I believe Marcus Armstrong is now full-time. So that'd be interesting to see how he does. Grosjean obviously left Andretti and went to
Juncos, yeah.
Juncos Holger. So it'll be interesting to see. But I'm not sure where Callum Ilot's going to end up. I don't think anything has been announced for him quite yet. But I could see Callum Ilott go to Dale Coyne because obviously Malukas is now at McLaren, um, with Rossi, Rosenquist, and Award. But but I think probably the team that I would see on the biggest downfall, to be honest, is Andretti because they have not been the same since 2018. And so it seems like after, or maybe even 2019 rather, because, after 2019, they've been absolutely nowhere. Sure, Colton Herta has been winning races, a few races a year, but besides that, he's been, very inconsistent, with whether it be mechanical issues or, DNFs of crashing the car. I know that Kyle Kirkwood had a pretty good season with them in the 27, winning 2 races. But I still think, even with the addition of Marcus Ericsson, it's still to be determined what number he's running. But I think it's going to be the 28, but it's uncertain at the moment. But I think it's going to take about a year or two for them to really get back on the right track of things in IndyCar, because I mean last time all of them were competitive was 2018, with Hunter Rossi, those drivers, and so, and obviously, another top team would be Penske with Newgard and McLaughlin and even Will Power as well. Being on top of their game, so it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out for the new season. I know that Elio Castroneves is now retired, pretty much. You got Tom Bloomquist over there in the 60. Um, and I'm pretty sure Pagano is also done, if I'm not mistaken, because of the crash that he sustained at Mid Ohio in practice. But it'll be interesting to see how the competition shakes out. If I had to pick an early championship, prediction, I would go with Joseph Newgarden because he had a very good season at the start. But the middle of the season where it was kind of rough for him, and then he picked it back up towards the end. So I think he obviously knows what he needs to do in order to be up at the top of the game with Blow.
Mhm.
I think this upcoming year for IndyCar, RLL just has a weird random breakout season. I'm talking Ram Rayall wins a few races. I'm talking Christian Lundgaard wins a few races. I don't think they'll be championship contenders, but I think they'll be a step in the right direction for that team. But,
Just gonna ignore Pietro.
oh yeah, I forgot to probably there.
Poor Pietro.
There's just been no talk around them for the last couple of weeks.
That's fair.
I feel like Pietro will score like maybe a top 5 here and there. I don't think he'll win, but he'll get used to the team pretty quickly. Maybe the year after he'll get his first win, but I don't see 2024 getting a win for him. But I think he'll have a breakout year, just not a championship winning year. I think the championship will either go to Palou again or maybe Pat.
I'm surprised that didn't wake up Sal.
What?
Yeah, bro is in his own world. No, he said he could predict Pato winning that
Hell
title.
yeah.
Well, to add on to what Kyler said about iLot, from what I've heard, they were planning on making an AJ Foyt car a Penske affiliate car in 2025, but from the sounds of it, they could be doing that a year early and putting iLot in there. So I have no clue if that's actually going to happen or not. Obviously, he's one of probably the biggest free agents on the market. I'd say Yuri Vips is up there too because I'm surprised he hasn't landed a spot. So he'll probably end up in that Dale Coyne seat, if anything, and then iLot over at Foyt. Um, I don't know. My season predictions, though, I feel like it's that kind of rotating door. Where one year it's Ganassi, one year it's Penske, vice versa, vice versa. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Penske guy win if I have to bet my money on anyone. It's going to be Power because I believe in 2020 he went winless.
2021.
2021, yeah. So 2021 he went winless, won the championship the following year, went winless this year, and I don't know. I feel like it'd be a type of power move to go and win the title this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see obviously Newgarden, who's a contender each year. McLaughlin's gotten a lot quicker throughout the past couple of years. I would be surprised to see him compete. Looking over at Andretti, if they seem to, for whatever reason, get their shit together, it seems like one year they're good, next year they're bad, one year they're all over the place. This past year, their only driver to win was Kyle Kirkwood when everyone was hyping up Colton Herta. So, you've got a program of drivers that can win and put themselves in contention if given the opportunity. So, if they can put together a season, I see, Ericsson, Kirkwood, Herta all being up there. It's going to be interesting to see how Marcus Armstrong does. Obviously, his first full-time year. We saw he was pretty quick already, just doing part-time on the road and street courses. Dixon's always a contender. Palou, if he puts together a season like last year, he's going to be unstoppable. So there's a lot of scenarios where you could see a lot of different guys, but I'm just going to have to bet my money on that Penske program. But any one of those Penske guys can get it, in my opinion. But there are a lot of people that are strong enough and fast enough that they can do it. But to get into NASCAR, across the 3 series, championship predictions, input on what you think will happen throughout the year.
Truck series, I think I said it earlier. I think Corey Haim's going to be the guy next year. I think this time he will win it without any controversy. And yeah, so he's my championship pick. Other than that, I mean, there's really nothing else I can think of to touch up on that series. Xfinity, I think Sam Mayer took a step back, and I said this to some other friends. I felt like Sam was one of those guys where once he gets one win, he'll start kind of putting them down as the season goes on. And I mean, he got that win at Road America, then got one at the Glen,
Charlotte.
Roval. I think he'll definitely be a contender next year. I also think that there will be trouble in paradise between him and Sammy Smith because I don't know why they just both give off that vibe. And then for Cup, oh man, that's a tough one. I don't necessarily want to give a championship pick. What I will say though is there's a lot of talk on Spire. They don't. I mean, you think Corey LaJoy is their guy, and he did pretty decent at first this season. I think both Zane Smith and Carson Hocevar are going to blow him out of the water. I think Zane Smith sniffs playoffs. I think Carson Hocevar is top 20. Yeah, for Cup Series for champion, it's just so hard to predict so early on. um, Give me Joey Logano though. I'm getting a Joey Logano vibe this year.
Okay. Random, but okay.
Honestly, I mean, for Cup, it's honestly uh, a question for everyone as far as performance because it's different. It seems like it's different every year whenever it comes to the chase. But honestly, if I had to pick, at least a couple drivers, Logano, because as we know, the Final Four trend every even year he makes the Final Four, and is a serious contender those years. So I'm just following that trend for now. But honestly, maybe a surprise, maybe not a championship contender, but a surprise would be Josh Berry in the four. Um, because he's been doing pretty well. He did pretty well in the equipment that he did, this year in the 42, and also, you know, in I can't remember what other car he did. I think it was the 77, or something like that. Um, Earlier this year as well, filling it pretty much being a super sub like Regan Smith did back in the 2010s era. But I think one driver to look out for will be Chris Buescher, and not only that, Brad Keselowski as well, because they've stepped up the game from the first year that it became RFK to last year winning 3 races, and Chris Buescher winning 3 of the 5 races that he did in that little span of sort of dominance that he had, and so I think as far as that goes, with the stage 60 program, RFK is going to be very competitive. Brad seemed to have gotten his speed back that he had since back in 2020, and 2021 with his last seasons of Penske. But honestly, I think a team that I could see that could struggle would be Joe Gibbs, because Hamlin obviously at the start of the year was all over the place. Truex, his team was all over the place in the chase whenever it mattered most. Ty Gibbs, he performed every now and then, but for the most part, he was pretty inconsistent. And Christopher Bell seemed to be like the top guy at JGR, but for some reason, it just seems like every few years there's one manufacturer that begins to struggle. Obviously from 2018 to around 2020, it was the Chevys that really struggled, and then in that era, it was the Fords that dominated with Kevin Harvick winning I think 8 races in 2018 or something like that. Um, but I think I think all of Toyota is gonna, have a bit of a struggle, I would say, in the start of the season. But I think, by the midpoint, um, they'll have a bit of a, confidence boost, I guess you could say. But as far as championship predictions go, honestly, Cup, I'm gonna have to go with Logano. I think he's gonna get his stuff together. Xfinity, honestly, I could see it being Austin Hill. He's missed the championship for so many times, but I think that next year is gonna be the year he finally does it. But trucks, honestly, I can honestly see Ben Rhodes do it again. He's been that guy that's been always around the truck series, and knows the situations that happen towards the end of the races, and I think he can put himself up at the front at the right time for that to happen. And so, those are just my predictions for that.
Well, my big three predictions for next year in NASCAR. For trucks, it's been a long career, but I feel like Matt Crafton at the end of 2024 hangs up the helmet. For Xfinity, damn, I got nothing for Xfinity. I'm just gonna say Justin Allgaier goes 7-for-1 or 1-for-7 and wins the championship finally in modern day playoffs. And for Cup, call me a bandwagon, but his first year, well, he got 3 wins of RCR. I think he steps it up a bit in 2024. I'm not saying he wins a championship, but I am saying that his season goes a lot better than what for 2023. That is all.
So then, who are your championship picks?
For trucks, damn, I ain't got a clue. I just don't got a clue, man. I mean, Corey Heim did great this past year. I think he can get it for 24. Allgaier for Xfinity and for Cup. Cup is a bit tough because I don't know if Byron can do the exact same thing he did this past year, but I have a slight feeling it's going to be a Henry driver. I don't think it's going to be Chase or Bowman, but maybe Larson, 2-time champion for 20. But that's about it. That's all I got.
Okay, so I'm agree with Fidel's prediction on Crafton. I do think he does retire. Aside from that, Truck Series season is going to be the same stuff. Just one good race and then a bunch of shit shows. Xfinity is probably going to be. We thought this year was competitive. I feel like this coming Xfinity season is going to be the most competitive field we've had once again. It's probably going to steal the show from the Sundays. Looking at the Cup Series season, I could see there being a lot of underdog moments with the smaller teams kind of being up front. I feel like there's going to be a lot of room for error with these top guys that are just going to make mistake after mistake if they do end up changing the package at a lot of these tracks. But when it comes to the championship picks, and I know Fabian and Sal have been waiting for my freezing cold takes to come back. Kyler, get ready because this is your first time experiencing it. So I'm looking at that Truck Series roster, and I'm saying Spire Motorsports driver Nick Sanchez is going to win the title. I look at Xfinity, and I'm going to say, looking at it, I'm going to say it's going to be an SHR guy with Riley Herbst. think that breakthrough year finally happens. He won a race finally. He almost got another one the following week. If Custer got the championship, he missed the playoffs this year with Herbst. I feel like SHR figured out what they needed to do in the Xfinity series again, and they're gonna go all in with those two guys and see what they can do. But then I look at Cup. Kyler mentioned that you always have that one manufacturer that struggles. This year it was Ford until apparently the ass end of the year. I look at it, I see Ford's brought in a new car, Toyota's brought in a new car. That means Chevy is going to be left hanging. So I look at that Toyota, I think it's going to be quick. Ladies and gentlemen, your 2024 Cup Series champion is going to be Joe Gibbs, number 54 driver, Ty Gibbs. That's my bold take. I don't care what anyone says about the other two. I'm going all in on Ty Gibbs next year.
That's really how you want to send off the podcast.
That's really how I want to send off the podcast, because if it's a long shot, I always go for these long shots. I don't play it safe. And I look at Joe Gibbs. You know, they had a standout year this year. And with Toyota bringing in that new car, you know, he's got Legacy Motor Club now with the Toyota program. You've got JHN over there. Those Toyotas are going to be pretty unstoppable at plate tracks, I think. You've got more power to them. And I just think something about that new car is going to be way quicker than the others. I feel like NASCAR is going to make them change it at the end of the year because of how much of an advantage it plays. But I don't know. I'm looking at Gibbs, his rookie season. It's not like he was bad. I feel like, you know, he did have some inconsistent moments, but there were races where he was up front. You know, he would qualify up front and, you know, just throughout the race, something would happen, whatever. Bristol was a big race where he was up front, you know, maybe had a shot at the win, but then weather played a factor. You know, he kind of just got sent to the back afterwards. But there were a few races where he seemed like he could be a guy to win that race. So I feel like after that first year of learning, he's going to have what it takes to, you know, be with that program that's made champions before and do it all over again. Pave his own way. That's what he wants to do. I feel like he can do it. So if I'm wrong in a year's time, then I'm going to be punching myself. Who knows? I don't think it's the worst take I could have made. I could have said Noah Gragson did it, but you know, he's going to have the Kyle Larson comeback season. But aside from that, I don't know if you guys have anything else to toss in. Nothing. No. All right. Well, with that, that wraps up our 2023 season. I deeply apologize to you guys and anyone that listens, watches, whatever the case. Because of just the lack of episodes. You know, last year we had like 10 episodes. This year we're about to hit 20. So, you know, next Wednesday we will have Jade Avedizian on the podcast. That's already been recorded. It's just waiting to go out. So, you know, everyone tune into that. Make sure you watch. But again, a huge thank you from me to you guys, the co-host, and well, everyone that watches, listens, you know, makes this possible. Big plans for 2024, big moments. You know, you never know what may happen because it's not just the drivers and the teams that get the fancy stuff. We can too if we play the cards right. So,
one thing I want to add on, while I was at Texas doing photography in turn one, I ended up getting the picture of, I believe it was Larson and Bubba racing for the lead at Texas. And, you know, I took a couple picture shots, and I've never had this happen to me before, but the moment I turn around to look at the Big Hoss TV, Larson's spinning out. And it's like, because I saw them go down in turn one, and the moment I turn around, Larson's backing up in the wall. And I'm like,
I should have kept looking for another second.
Because the thing is, the way turn one, at least where I was standing, is like the wall is like, you have turn one going down an incline per se, and then, you know, all the safety vehicles and stuff around the fence are, you know, sort of like blocking like the lower part of turn one. And then, you know, obviously when I looked back, Larson is spinning out, and I was like, oh my God.
Well, so it seems like your little introduction to BRP with your first credential race, and
Yeah,
well,
that was definitely something.
now
One
you've
thing
been on
is
our
just,
longest episode too.
yeah.
Jeez. Well, anything else, guys?
Not much.
All right. So once again, thank you all for being a part of the 2023 season. We'll see you guys in 2024 at mid-late January. We'll still be active on the socials, posting the latest news and stuff like that. But until then, we'll see you next time. See you guys.